Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play today? Well, today I'm going to show you a very fancy and formal technique for drawing. And you've probably detected a little sarcasm in there because there's a lot of sarcasm. The drawing, well, I'm going to draw the things that come to mind. And what comes to my mind, they're pretty complex ideas. But I'm not going to be intimidated when it comes to drawing them in my art journal. Now you might wonder why, because I'm really not, how shall we say, a master drawer of realistic things. Well, that's because I'm going to turn to the masters of play, that is, for how to handle this. Now, when I worked with kids, they basically wanted to draw something, they did it. They didn't analyze it, they didn't evaluate it, they just picked up what they had and started drawing. So I'd like to take figure drawing. Now, most adults, when they think about that, start thinking about proportion, does it look like this or that? What do kids do when they want to draw a figure? They draw a stick figure. Yeah, that's all it is. You pick up something and you draw what you're thinking. So that's what I'm going to do in my art journal. You're going to see how I do this very, very fancy and formal style of drawing, and then how I use that to build the base of an art journal page. So I'm going to start drawing what's in my head. Now, I could decide to get all nitpicky and say that what I'm drawing is not immediately recognizable by everybody else who sees it. I could get nitpicky and say it doesn't look like a photograph of the item. Or I could decide to just play and have some fun the way kids do. I'm thinking this thing and I'm going to start to draw it. So this is the equivalent version of stick figures for the things that I've got in my head. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. It doesn't matter if anybody else even knows exactly what it is, because I'm the one that knows and I'm the one that's having fun doing it. So what is the inspiration for this drawing? What's in my head? Well, these are all some of the characters and elements from an app called Pokemon Go. Now, if you're a Pokemon Go player, you probably are having a hard time recognizing some of this, although you might figure out that that red person up there, that's the person that goes around hunting for the Pokemon. And you might recognize this caterpillar-like creature. It could be a couple of different ones from in the game, I think. But these are in no way an accurate, detailed representation of what's actually in the app or the game. But it doesn't have to be. I don't have to be a master cartoonist to try and draw these things, because I'm just playing, I'm just having fun. And as a grown-up, it's really easy for me to not do something because I'm not really good at it. Kids don't have that problem. When they want to go do something, they just go do it. It doesn't matter if they're an expert at it or a master of it. They just want to go and have fun because it's play. And the grown-up part of me looks at this and goes, what are you going to do with this? Where is this going? All those kinds of questions about, what's going to happen next? Does this make any sense? Is anybody going to understand it? All of that stuff is that left brain trying to make sense out of play. When I have no plan, there is no grand design for what this is going to become. I'm just following impulses. I'm just grabbing whatever colors I want and drawing whatever comes to mind. Now, leaving white space on stuff is not my first instinct, so I'm going to color up. Yeah, that's a good slip of the tongue there. I'm going to color up the rest of this page. I'm going to use paint for a little bit more here, but then I'm going to add something different, because after doing this much paint, I get kind of bored and I want to bring something else in. So I'm going to bring in the oil pastels. And I'm doing these just like I did the paint. Whatever I feel like doing, it doesn't have to look like anything. There doesn't have to be a plan. My goal here is really to just kind of color up this page, to get all sorts of stuff on it and pretty much get rid of as much white space as I can. I also love using oil pastels because it feels very much like using a creamy crayon, so I definitely pick up that kid vibe with that. There's just something about watching that color show up on the page and writing all over whatever I want. So I'm just going to keep adding bits and pieces of it here as long as I have the impulse to do that. And now I've got a wonderful color background to start an art journal page. So what am I going to do with all that color? Well, I am going to put a stencil on top of it. Now that's a lot of color happening on there, so I'm going to need a nice dark color to really make this pop. So to do that, I am going to use black paint. So it's black acrylic paint that I've got there on my little homemade paint palette, which is just freezer paper that I've cut up and stapled to a piece of cardboard. And that's the ever fancy cosmetic sponge that I've dipped in the paint there. So now I'm going to fiddle around with the exact placement of the stencil where I want it. Yeah, can't you see a big change from where it was before? Looks like about the same spot. I'm going to hold the stencil down. This one is called 1700s and I created it for StencilGirl Products. And the cosmetic sponge, well, notice how I'm going up and down with it? There's a reason for that. If I want a crisper line, meaning I don't want any paint to run underneath the stencil, then my best chance is by going in an up and down motion. Now, something else that helps is to have a small amount of paint on the cosmetic sponge. That I'm not so good at. I tend to put a lot of paint on there because I want it to be super dark in one pass. Basically, I'm impatient. So what happens is sometimes paint will run under there that I wasn't expecting. Does that ever bother me? Nah, I just call it an oops, an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. And on this art journal page, it's nothing like anything is super precise. So should I happen to use a little too much paint, not going to bother me in the least. Well, here I am almost finished, and what I'm doing is touching up in places where I feel like it wasn't as dark or the paint didn't stick as well to the oil pastel by just putting another little bit here and there. That'll darken it up and get it the way I want it. So now when I think I'm all done, I can just lift the stencil off, and now I've got the house, this very, very colorful house on there, but there's still a lot of activity on that background. I want the house to pop even more than what it's doing right now, so I'm going to get rid of some of the background here. Now, as I put this white paint around this, I'm not being that careful, and I don't have to be, because that's the cool thing about stencils is I don't have to be that careful. So I'm going to be somewhat careful when I go around the edges and around the different chimney stacks. But guess what? If I make a mistake with it, it's just an oops, and it's really, really easy to fix, correct, whatever you want to call it with a stencil, because you put the stencil back on it and then just put a little more paint right on top. So nothing has to be precise. And guess what? All that white space now? Yep, that's got me thinking about coloring it up or covering it up. Either way, that white space isn't going to be here much longer. So I'm just going to take another color of paint and I'm just going to put it all over it. And again, if I mess anything up on the edges with the stenciling, all I have to do is put the stencil right back up on top of it. Well, now I want to create some sketchy lines over that black, the edges, the different parts of the house to make them pop. So I'm going to bring in something called a fine liner. And this is basically an empty container with a very fine tip that you fill with whatever you like. Now I filled this one with acrylic ink, and if you're new to the fine liner and all the ways that it works, I've got a video for you that you can check that out that goes into detail about how the fine liner works. But it's my fun way of writing over stuff without worrying about ruining a pen, because I've ruined an awful lot of pens while I've art journaled. And the more I look at this page, the more I so feel the urge to go and paint the outside of my house to look like this. Now the neighbors, don't sweat it. If any of you are listening, I'm probably not really going to do that, but man, is the temptation strong. Well, now I'm going to bring in another fine liner, and I'm just going to put some scribbled journaling up at the top, whatever's going through my mind, and you bet it's all about the different ways that I wish I had a house that was all these colors on the outside. Well, thanks for joining me for today's play. If you've been enjoying this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And of course, you can find all sorts of play over on my blog at acolorfuljourney.com. Not only do I have lots more Let's Play videos about rediscovering play, but I've got a free newsletter that has free downloadable things for you to play with, as well as a free workshop called Permission to Play. Yep, there's that four-letter word that I love, play. Well, thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.